Hey guys, welcome to today's lesson. Today we are learning about simple interest. Okay, in short, today we'll be looking at what interest is. We'll then focus on simple and we'll look at some questions. So first of all, what is interest? You hopefully remember what interest is. If you are borrowing money off somebody, they're not going to give it just to you for nothing. They're going to charge you a little bit extra. Okay, because they want to get something out of it, unless they're really nice, of course. So, for example, a bank, they might lend you some money and they might say, hey, here's $50,000. You need to pay that amount back. But every year, you got to pay us 10% on that actual amount. Likewise, you might lend the bank your money, okay, and you might tell them, hey, I'm going to lend you the money, but every year you need to give me something in return. And that's what the savings is, okay? So basically, interest is the extra amount on the initial amount either borrowed or lent. Now, that's what interest is. There are different types of interest, of course. We're focusing on simple. Simple interest is generally going to be calculated off the original amount that you borrow. Whereas if we look at compound, they kind of calculate each year and say, well, how much do you owe us? And that's what we're going to sort of work out on the percentage. We don't really use simple interest that much more anymore, but certainly it's important for us to learn about. So let's look at an example. Let's say, for example, I would like to borrow $50,000 from the bank. I say I want to borrow it over 5 years, and they tell me, well, that's okay, but you have to repay us 10% every year. Now, PA means per annum. That's important for us to know. And what that means, of course, is per year. It means that each year they're going to charge you 10%. Now, remember, simple interest means that every year they're going to work it out off that $50,000. And what we have to kind of work out, well, how much extra do we have to pay them? Obviously, I have to pay the $50,000 back, but what's the interest that I have to pay? Okay. And that's generally what these questions will entail. Now, if I look at this, it's not a hard question. I can work out, well, 10% of $50,000, that's going to be $5,000, which means every year I'm paying an extra $5,000 back. That's my interest. Okay, so I'm going to times that by 5 for 5 years, which means over the course of the 5 years, I'm going to be paying back an extra $25,000. Don't forget that you have the initial $50,000 that you owe them, which means in total, we actually owe the bank $75,000. That's a lot of money, okay? But of course, the bank, they're not going to lend you that money for nothing. So this is like a generalized sort of question. Now, I'm going to throw some letters and some terms at you because we use a rule in mathematics that kind of simplifies this even further. I'm going to call the 50,000 the P, 5 years the N, 10% the R, and the interest the I. And I wonder if you know what those words are. So P is actually what we call the principal. That's the starting amount, the original amount, the initial amount. Okay, it's what you start with, it's what you're investing or what you're borrowing. That's our P value. N is the number. Now, when we talk about simple interest, the number of years. Okay, when we talk about R, well, that refers to the interest rate. Okay, so, and it's the yearly or the annual rate in this instance, but it can change for different questions. And then I, of course, I'm going to call this the simple interest. Now, if I look at that formula and how I calculate it, we actually come up with this. I equals PRN, where I'm multiplying those things together, and you can see that in my example above. That's exactly what I did. I took the principal of 50,000, I took the interest rate of 10%, and I times it by the number of years, and that's it. If you can remember that formula, remember those the letters and what they mean, this is pretty easy stuff. Some harder questions, of course, come about when they give you the interest and you have to work backwards to find the number of years or the interest rate or what you start with. But if you come back to this formula, it's pretty straightforward. Now, if I look at my the question that I had, there are sometimes two different answers. For example, okay, there could be 25,000 or there could be 75,000. And so you have to figure out, what are they asking me? Now, in this question, I could have said, how much interest am I returning or how much interest am I paying back? In that case, the interest would have been that $25,000. Okay, that's how much extra I had to pay. But if they said, how much do you owe? Well, that talks about the final amount. We often call that A, all right? And that's how much I have to pay back. And you can follow that little rule because the 50,000 we know is the principal, that if I want to find the final amount, we can also use this formula that the final amount equals the principal plus the interest earned or paid. Now, I don't really use that second formula, to be honest with you, because I just use common sense, okay? And we'll look at that in those questions. Okay, now I'm going to put these questions on the board here. I'm just going to minimize that for a moment. If you would like to perhaps pause it and have a crack at these 5 questions and go for your life, I'm going to go through them. You're happy to pause them if you want, or fast forward through my gobbledygook. All right, so the very first question. I invest $600 at 3% per annum for 3 years. Now, in this case, it says calculate the interest. There's nothing else mentioned. If there's nothing else mentioned, we pretty much assume that it's going to be simple. Later on, with harder questions, you might see the word compound, which is a different style of interest. If you don't see the word compound, then we often know it's going to be simple. So the minute I know it's simple interest, I write down the formula I equals PRN. I'm now going to come over to here and say, well, we want to calculate the interest. So I'm looking for the I. So it means I've got the P value, which is 600, the R value, which is 3%, and the N value is 3 years. I'm still going to type that in, 600 times 3% times 3. And of course, you can use the percentage button or 0.03. I'm going to put that in my calculator. You could probably do it without the calculator in this instance. But 3% is probably about right these days. It's about 2 or 3%. It used to be a lot more, but at the moment it's a lot lower. So what we're actually having here, we're going to be earning $54 over the period of the 3 years. Now I'm going to come back to the question. Did it ask for the interest or did it ask for how much do I have altogether? Calculate the interest. Therefore, that I equals is my final answer. Always go back, reread the question every single time. Don't lose careless marks, okay? All right. Example 2, I put $1,000 into a savings account for 2 years at 2% interest. How much do I have altogether? Well, no mention of compound or anything else, so I'm going to think I equals PRN. I write it down every single time, guys. Now, I'm looking for simple interest because I'm not given the simple interest. So I'm going to put I equals, the principal is the $1,000. Beautiful. The interest rate, well, that's the 2%. So I'm going to put in 2% or 0.02. I'm going to put the number of years, and that's 2 years. I'm going to times it by 2. And then once again, I'm going to simply put into my calculator left to right. Again, up to you if you use decimals or percentages. I mean, I probably prefer percentages, particularly for, I prefer decimals for higher level classes. But if you want to use percentage button, by all means, you're most welcome to. So we end up getting $40 here. Now I go back to the question and say, yep, beautiful, answer my question. Just double check things. Did it ask for the interest or the whole amount? How much do I have altogether? Okay, important. That doesn't want the interest, it wants the final amount. So I started with $1,000, that's my P value. I'm adding on the interest, which means in total, I have $1,040. Now that is my final answer. See how if you rush things and you just gave the I equals $40, you're not going to get the total marks and you've wasted possible marks you could get. So look at those 2 questions. Always be careful. Am I looking for I or am I looking for the total amount A? All right, next question. I'm trying to give you a variety of different questions. This one is almost the same, but there's a trick to it. Did you get it? Okay, first of all, I borrow $6,000 at 10% per annum for 6 months. How much interest do I owe? Okay, does not mention about compound. I equals PRN. Now, how much interest do I have? Well, that means I'm finding the I value. So I've got a principal of 6,000. I've got a rate of 10%. And I've got, here we go. This is a bit of a problem, isn't it? 6 months this time. If I put times 6 there, can you see the problem with that? If I put times 6, that actually means 6 years. So how do I convert 6 months to years? Well, you know what we can do? We can simply put it over 12, okay? And that now means 6 months is a half, right? It's a half a year, so 0.5 would work, or 6 over 12 would work. And now I can simply put it into my calculator. I'm going to type it in, 6,000. We're going to times that by my 0.1 or 10%. And I'm going to times that by 0.5 or 6 over 12. And we now get $300. I'm going to go back to my question. Did it want the interest or the final amount? It wants the interest. Therefore, that is my answer. Now, there is another way to do that question as well. You'll notice that I turned the end value into years. If I wanted to, I could actually do the same question, but I could turn the interest rate into months. For example, I could say I equals my principal of 6,000 times my 10%. How many months there are in a year? Well, there are 12 months in a year. So that actually means I'm getting 10% over 12, okay? And that would actually be per month for 6 months. And if you have a look at my working out, you can see the first way, which I kind of prefer, the 6 is over the 12. The second one, the 10% is over the 12. Doesn't actually matter which one is over 12, as long as it's there somewhere. But two different ways, you'll still get the answer of $300. Okay, hope that worked out well. Now, 2 questions to go. I'm making it a little bit longer than I wanted to, so I'm going to go through these quickly. Question 4, harder question. This is probably like a, in year 9, like a B or a C level question. Certainly not an A level question at the moment, but a B level question definitely. How long should I invest $250 for if I want to make $50 of interest at 18% per annum? Now, no word of compound, I equals PRM. But in this case, what am I looking for? It says, how long? Well, that is the N value, which means I haven't got N, which means I must have the I, the P, and the R. Well, what's my principal? Well, I'm investing $250. My interest rate, that's easy, it's 18%. Well, we're looking for the N, so I don't have that. What does other $50 mean? Well, that's the interest. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is put 50 equals 250 times 18% times N. And now it's just an algebraic equation. There's lots of ways that we could do this. For example, I could simplify the 250 times 18%, which I'm actually going to do that. So 250 times 0.18. I'm just going to simplify that right-hand side, and I get 50 equals 45 times N. And now the opposite of times 45 would be divide by 45. And I then get N equals, I'm going to do 50 divided by 45. And I get 1.1 recurring. So it's 1.1 years or 1/9 of a year. If you want to put it into months, you can. But certainly, that's what I'll put my answer as. N equals 1.1 recurring. So therefore, 1.1 recurring years. That would be fine. Okay, that's a harder question. Now, you could have divided by the 250 and then divided by the 18%. That works out well. And this question, this setup will work no matter what you're looking for on that right-hand side. If they ask you for the principal, they ask you for the rate, do exactly the same thing. Plug your numbers in and then simply pull them across the other side until you find the letter you're looking for. That's a harder question. Now, the last one is a 5-3 level question. Okay, probably not a 5-2 question at the moment, but a 5-3 and probably around a B level to A level question for 5-3. How long will it take to double my money if I invest $500 at 10% per annum? Well, first of all, I'm going to write down I equals PRN. Now, some obvious things. I'm investing $500, so that's 500 there. I'm doing it 10% per annum. 10% goes there. I'm looking for how long, that's my N value. So the one I have to look for is what am I putting there? We've got to be very careful with this question. It says, how long will it take to double my money? Well, that's interesting because most people will do this. Double 500 is 1,000, and that's incorrect. Because if I now add my 1,000 that I'm making my interest to my principal, that's actually 1,500, and I've now tripled my money. So what does doubled mean? Well, doubled means that my principal is $500, and I'm going to add $500 to it to make that $1,000 in total, which means that's my principal, that's my interest. my interest is actually $500, which means I've got my principal of 500 and I'm simply making 500, means I'm doubling. And now it's the same as the last question. Okay, you could do 500 divided by 500. Okay, if I do that, divide by 500, that makes 1 equals 10% times n, and I could divide by 10%, okay, and do it on your calculator, or you can do it in your head, because you're only doing 1 divided by 0.1, okay, which you should know is going to be 10, so we simply get 10 years. Likewise, you could say 500 equals 10% of 500 is $50 times n, and then you can divide it by 50, still getting n equals 10. And either way, we can say n equals 10 years. Gents, I've taken you through a whole lot of stuff with simple interest. I know I said it'll be short and it's still 15 minutes long, but it's important to really nut out these harder questions and to really remember that the formula is I equals PRN. Always write your formula down, plug the numbers in, and then find the letter that you're trying to identify or trying to solve for. Always reread the question once you've found your answer. Have you found what they asked? Have you found the interest, or have you found the whole amount? What did they want? Don't lose easy marks. Have a wonderful day. I hope you're well.